if you've ever wondered what makes someone toxic versus just a bit self-centered, if you've met a partner who seemed perfect at first and then things just got a little bit weird, or if you just want to understand why some relationships feel draining and impossible to leave, well, you're in the right place. I'm joined by Dr. Richard Hogan, family psychotherapist and author. Richard, you're very welcome.
Good to see you, Jennifer.
Good to see you again. Thank you so much for doing this.
Glad to be here.
We were talking off air there. Is that word, is it bandied around?
I know it is. Look,
it is, a little bit.
It is a bit of a TikTok sensation, there's no doubt about it, right? And it's a part of modern lexicon, you know. Oh, she's a narcissist, he was a narcissist. Anybody who kind of upsets us a little bit, we can say they're narcissistic, not doing the dishwasher, narcissistic. There might be a little bit of selfishness. So narcissism is actually on the DSM as a disorder. So it's different than just someone being a bit selfish, someone being a little bit more self-consumed, somebody being interested in themselves a bit more than hearing other people's stories, whatever. That doesn't make you narcissistic. You might have some traits of a narcissist, but narcissism as an actual disorder is something completely different.
Well, I never knew that.
And it's devastating to be around it.
Yes.
Particularly if a parent is narcissistic.
Well, let's talk about that. How do you spot it in a child? If this is a disorder, how do you spot that your child is a narcissist?
Well, I mean, it would be quite hard to spot it in a younger child and all that kind of stuff. And there would be genetic markers, and you mightn't be able to spot it because possibly you might be living with it yourself, right? And so there's a lack of self-awareness. But again, what you'd see in your child, one of the great markers for children would be as they're maturing, as they're growing up and their cognition is becoming more sophisticated, you'd start to see things like, normal markers of empathy not being met.
Okay.
A child at 2 now won't have too much empathy and all the rest of it because it hasn't developed that yet, and they won't want to share and all the rest of it, right? That doesn't make them narcissistic. But as they grow up and they're moving into their 11, 12, 13, 14, and you can see that they have a very clear lack of awareness of other people. They have a lack of empathy towards other people. You might start to see some markers there in around that kind of developmental stage.
Okay. Welcome to Just Between Us with me, Jennifer Zamparelli, sponsored by Kildare Village. Oh, yeah. Now, this podcast is mostly about fun indoors, but if you fancy a bit of al fresco, why not get out of the house and take a visit to Kildare Village with over 100 boutiques, 60 of which are exclusive in Ireland and 20 new brands to choose from. Visit Kildare Village, shopping that's so Irish. Is it a common thing?
I think the statistics would say about 5% of the population might live with it.
That's enough.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And I would say the majority of people who live with it, science wouldn't pick it up because they don't see it in themselves. And clinically, I would say, borne out anecdotally, it's quite prevalent. And it is absolutely destruction for a child when a parent is narcissistic.
Okay.
Because it brings a child into the idea that the parent's feelings and emotions are paramount. So it indoctrinates a child into honestly, it's stuff that creates real problems for a child growing up and who they meet in a relationship, who they go into marriage with, how they interact with their friends. They become real people pleasers. Mm-hmm. They become pathological pleasers because they were told very early, you're not enough, you're not valuable. You need to think about my needs before your needs. And if you want to be happy, I have to be happy. That's a terrible, devastating place to put a child. It fractures their attachment.
You said, can it be managed? Like if someone is a narcissist, I know you probably can't manage them, but I suppose it's so tricky because they recognise in themselves they're a narcissist.
Yeah, it's funny. And actually psychotherapy, in my experience, isn't great.
Like I doubt you get people knocking on your door going, "Hi, I'm a narcissist. I need some help."
You meet it a lot, though. Because I'm a family therapist, so I meet families a lot, and you meet families in very difficult situations, and you can spot that there's something here that's other than the child or whatever. There's something bigger happening in the family, and you can spot narcissism in the family. You can see how the family have been manoeuvred by a particular person in the relationship with a dad or mom, whatever it is. And the minute you challenge it, the therapy gets shut down generally. Because you're knocking on someone's identity and their role in the family. And if you're coming in to be a bit of a disruptor, or maybe you're bringing awareness to, John, the child isn't the issue here. There's something else that's there and that you're trying to unpack and trying to help someone out of their way of parenting their child. Therapy can kind of come to a very profound full stop there.
I can imagine. And I suppose, let's say John, who is the narcissist, would be very hard to deal with, but maybe your job would be to help the people around him.
That's what you're doing. You're managing. Well, that's what a lot of my work is. It's very sad. helping a child, because you can't change the family that he's living in, you know what I mean, unless they're coming into therapy, which often isn't the case. So you're trying to help the younger, whatever teenager there, or the child there, to manage, to internalize what's happening in their world.
Yeah.
You know, and some of the advice I'd often give to a child, because I felt this myself as a kid growing up. When you're 14, Jennifer, you know yourself, when you're 14 or 15, it feels like forever. Adulthood, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It feels like it's a universe away from you, like, you know what I mean? It's an Everest out there. And I remember feeling that myself, you know, because my father was an alcoholic and struggled with some of this stuff. And I remember thinking as a kid, geez, I'm never going to get out of this situation. And like that, you're out of it. But when you're 14 or 15, it doesn't feel like that. So the information I always give to kids is like, you know, teenagers, I know it seems like a long time living in this environment right now, but I would be really thinking about the college I go to. I often give them that advice, and I can see them like you nodding awake and thinking, good advice. I'm thinking, you know, Galway looks nice, you know. Mm-hmm. So what I'm trying to do is get a bit of distance for them, you know, and say, what would it be like to go to a college somewhere else and live on your own for a little? Because all you're trying to do is give them a bit of peace from what they're living with and get a bit of distance, because that might recalibrate the relationship a little bit, and that might give you a bit of space to kind of mature, because kids who come out of narcissistic parents often have delayed maturation because they get enmeshed into the parent's identity, and so they don't know who they are or what they're about themselves. It takes them a long time to figure that out. And it's awful stuff.
It's awful. And then with relationships, I mean, is it easier in a relationship to just walk away?
Well, it really isn't, because this is what the narcissist does. They're very considered in their maneuvering, right? And so when you meet a narcissist in a relationship, and think about this, like yourself or anyone listening, did I come across a narcissist in my relationships? They reel you in at the start. They absolutely love bomb you. Like, you know what I mean? They're so attentive to you, because all they're thinking about is like you creating a memory of how great this relationship can be. Because when it turns awful, you know what I mean? At least you'll have that little hook. Because a narcissist is incredibly manipulative. They know what they're doing. They're trying to hook you into a narrative about them and the relationship and how great it once was. And it's all designed to trap you. So it can be quite hard to walk away from a relationship, because you have been manipulated into a kind of a thing about how the relationship was. So people often stay in relationships a lot longer than they should have, for that exact reason.
So somebody came to you and said, I'm in this relationship. They are absolutely amazing. He's perfect. I'm just using he as an example. It could be a she. He is perfect. He sends me flowers. He writes me love notes. He's the most perfect person. Oh my God, he's just all over me. Would that be a red flag to you? In the beginning.
Personally, I'd be like, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
I gotta meet this guy. No, it wouldn't be a red flag.
It's happened to me before.
Yeah, but did that rapidly change?
Oh, 100%.
Well, there's the red flag.
Yeah, the
change. What I mean? The tectonic plates under which you stand, if they're shifting, and if it's all lovely roses and flowers and meals, and oh my God, Jennifer, you're just so amazing, and they're like, you know, propping you up, and you go, oh my God, this person is so attentive, they get me so much, and then within a second it changes.
Yes.
Now there's the red flag.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
If they can sustain their flowers, and that's me, I can sustain that in my relationship. My wife would attend to that. Flowers, meals out, just massive attention. Now, who the hell can sustain all of that all through your life? But if it's rapid shifting, and if it's rapid,
that makes sense.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's
if how they communicate to you changes, and how you feel about yourself changes dramatically, there's the red flag.
I suppose. It's like living with two different people.
Well, it can be a whole lot of different people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what I'd say to people, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, is this person a bit like that? Because some of these things sounds familiar. I would say things to think about, right? Do I feel better in this person's company? Because of this relationship, am I closer to my family? There's a really good marker. Right, because they often get in between the family and they sever that relationship because they want to get you on their own. There's often an awful lot of coercive control involved in the narcissistic's kind of like desire to kind of exert ultimate control over you, because that's what they're about. They have a very fractured sense of themselves, but they want you to be absolutely attentive to them, because a big part of narcissism is like admiration and attention. Attention is a huge thing that a narcissist desires. You know what I mean? And like they have this grandiosity about themselves, that they're brilliant and that they're incredible. And so you have to give me all of your attention. And if you're with your mom and dad and you love your dad, and your dad, I want to get in there and sever that because I need to have all your attention. So is my relationship better with my parents as a result of this relationship? And do am I scared to say things because, I'm walking in a bit of eggshells here to upset him or her? Am I kind of considering what I say, because I know I could say the wrong thing any second, and then they're going to be annoyed, and then the whole evening is destroyed, and all the rest of it. And they're trying to just basically manipulate us to be under their control, and their spell. And so those are really important markers to kind of think about.
They're very important questions to ask yourself
absolutely.
if you are doubting or if you
Do
feel...
they support me?
Yeah.
A huge thing, just even beyond narcissism, about friendships. Any friend, I think, can be with you when you're having a tough time. You know what I mean? The old friends that are there for the tough times. A real friend is there for the good times. A really important friend is celebrating your successes and saying, Jesus, Jennifer, you're doing really well. That's amazing. You know what I mean? That's...
Yeah.
Because I think anyone can be there for the suffering part and kind of go prop you up, because then I have a very clear role and I'm just there to kind of like help you and all that. But if I'm not so delighted about your success and how you're going, there's something uneven in that relationship. And it's something to think about in our relationships. What kind of relationships do we have here? Mm-hmm. And if there's someone in your life, if it's a parent or if it's a relationship, and you think they might be narcissistic, I'd be thinking about those markers I said. And then I'd be thinking also about this idea, what has stopped me from leaving the person?
What type of person does a narcissist
Target.
Generally target?
Yeah, you're right.
Date?
Yeah, date. Well, that's more targeting than even dating. They're looking for somebody who has high levels of self-confidence. They're like very attuned to someone who's insecure. And they will be able to spot the insecurities a mile away, because they also live with these insecurities, but they bury them incredibly deep down, right? And so they want somebody who is a people pleaser. They want someone who is amenable. They want somebody who will be easy to direct and to control.
Okay.
Then they meet a guy who targets them, and it's profound, because they're brought in under the spell of you're amazing, because they've never felt that about themselves. And so that's incredible in those early moments, isn't it? That you're wonderful, you're amazing, you're just this, you're so beautiful, and let's go for here, let's go there, this guy's so exciting, this girl is so exciting, this is so exciting, they get me, they love me, they really adore me. And then all of a sudden the carpet starts to get pulled from under your feet.
Leaving a narcissist in a relationship, I'd say, is one of the most difficult things to do. But why so? I mean, is it because the person becomes so isolated?
Yeah, that's what really, I work with I get so many letters. It actually kind of makes me, when I think about it, I get a bit emotional. So many parents write into my clinic to write me letters to say, they heard me talking about this, whatever. I might talk about family estrangement, or I might talk about parental alienation or coercion and all that kind of stuff. And they'd say, our daughter, it's often, in those letters, it's often the daughter. Our daughter's been lost to us for so many years now. She's dated this guy, and he's destroyed our relationship. And so for parents listening to it always, I would say never get into the conversation about him or her. Like I'd say, don't ever badmouth the person. I'd only ask questions, to your daughter or your son. I'd ask them, do you feel good in his company or her company? I'd never kind of go in there with judgment, because that feeds the narcissist narrative. Your parents are so judgmental. They hate us. They don't want us to
hate me.
Yeah, they hate me. They don't want you to be happy. They don't want us to be together. And so when you're saying he's an awful, or you're feeding into that narrative, I just ask questions and say things like, does she make you feel good about yourself? Are you more confident in yourself now than you're with in this relationship? Because they might say, yeah, Dad, of course you get that defensive thing. But by God, they'll reflect on it and they'll think about what the questions you asked. And then when they see the relationship, the dynamic in front of their eyes, those questions will come back up. Do I actually feel better in this relationship? Is this person controlling me? Am I less secure in myself? Really important things.
So you've had letters. You've had people looking
loads.
for advice. Oh my God, my daughter or my son. But predominantly my daughter.
In those letters, in my experience, it's the daughter.
Yeah.
And it's the daughter lost in a relationship, and they've lost this daughter, and they've been cut off, and they might even have grandkids. It's so sad. Like, they might even have grandkids.
It's so sad.
You know what I mean?
Has there ever been a happy ending to those stories?
There has, yeah. I mean, I would work clinically with it a lot. And so what you're trying to do there is, but I just think I have so many case studies in my head that I could go through here. It's incredible. But what you're trying to do there is help the parents back into the relationship with their daughter. Sometimes there might be the husband is still in the relationship and they're trying to figure out how to be together now and accept this person, even though that this shattering has happened in the relationship. Other times the person is coming to me because they have left someone and they're trying to figure out how to kind of live their lives now and how to manage their lives past it. And in all of those narratives, it's always, I can't believe I stayed that long with them. I really can't. It's like their eyes are open once they get away from it. the spell is kind of broken a little bit, and they're kind of going, God, I can't believe I stayed that long with them when they made me feel like that.
And sometimes that can take years.
It can take a long time. Yeah.
Can a narcissist ever change?
It's a great question, Jennifer. I'm a great optimist, right? But when it's chronic, probably not. And narcissists often seek out therapists who are more inexperienced and young, so that they can indoctrinate them into their story as well about how they're the victims. I mean, a narcissist loves to play themselves as the victim.
Okay.
You know, in family dynamics, in therapeutic conversations, in the relationship, whatever it is, they have to see that they have to be able to present themselves as somehow, you know, the victim here, where they're the ones subtly orchestrating all of the family chaos there, but they have to position themselves. And they like their children to be in conflict with each other, because if their kids are like compared and conflicted, they're away from attention. And so they're the ones somehow trying to fix this situation, and they're the ones who are victimized by their children's squabbling and all the rest of it. But ultimately, they actually orchestrated all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so can it be fixed? I suppose I have worked with people who have said to me things like, I didn't realize how I behaved. I think my own parents were like this. I think my father treated me like this. So they're coming to an awareness about how they got to kind of view the world through this prism. You know, so that can be a bit healing. Is
there inevitably, do narcissists end up alone, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, yeah, it's a very good question. It's very sad to be the narcissist. You know what I mean, when you really think about it, because it is a disorder. It is in the DSM-5, and it's kind of scorched earth stuff as far as I see it. I never see a family that's restorative, really, you know, and it's healed. And I think the narcissist ultimately ends up on their own.
Okay.
To be honest, because it becomes unbearable. And when you're a kid and you're indoctrinated into this, you don't understand the world and you believe this to be your reality. But when you start getting 15, 16 and you go into other people's families and you start seeing other parents, and then you meet somebody, you go into a relationship, and then you have your own children, and then you start rearing your children, you realize, Jesus, you know, my kids don't know anything about my mental health. My kids don't know any. You start to realize that what happened to you was abuse. You know what I mean? You start to waken up. You wake up to the situation what happened to you as a kid, and so that's why the narcissist could get alienated, because the person who's come up in their relationship starts to kind of go, God, that's not right. That was not normal. What happened to me? They should not have done that to me. They shouldn't have positioned me like that, and that is actually abuse. What happened to me, and then that's what I think ultimately happens to a narcissist.
And the huge problem is, if a narcissist is unable to change with help, they're not going to see the fault in themselves.
No.
So they're not going to be able to let go. So it's this. So really, we're looking after the people who live around the narcissist, the kids, the families, the partners.
All the orbits around
and
them,
rebuilding their lives, which I'm sure can take a lot of work.
It does. It can take an awful lot of work. And that's why it's so sad to live with this condition, because ultimately, what does a narcissist want? Attention, right? If you think about it, what does a narcissist want? They have an endless need for attention and admiration. They have a sense of their grandiosity, and then they have very low levels, if not zero, empathy, right? And so those 3 or 4 things together are so destructive for a personality. And then what happens to you? You have no attention, because people just pull away from you. And so the very thing that you were desperate to get is the thing that causes you to have none of it. You know what I mean? And so your family pull away. The grey rocking kind of, you know, they tell you nothing. They come around at Christmas maybe, because they've learned over the years going into your house is so detrimental to their mental health. They leave frustrated. They ruminate for hours, for weeks even, on what you said to them. And so they learn over the course of their lives. Their partners probably talk to them and say, you know, you're not good when you go in there. And so they start to learn, maybe I shouldn't go in there, you know. And all of a sudden then there's just like isolation, and there's a fracture in the family. And that just simmers away then forever. Can we do a quick recap on the telltale signs? Yeah, the markers for narcissism would be like someone's need for attention, someone needs for admiration, an incredible sense of grandiosity, their own self-importance. A lot of bosses, Jennifer, are narcissistic, right? Because they seek out these positions of authority. And narcissists generally hold themselves, because often when they don't have a position and they don't have wealth and they don't have that FU money, they have to hold themselves but they feel it, and they feel this greatness about them inside, and then they push themselves forward to get a job.
It must be exhausting because it's
Absolutely.
never enough.
Nothing is ever enough.
No.
And you might even be cynical towards your kids because they might be successful, and that's too much success then, because that reflects the fact that you weren't successful, or they mightn't succeed, and then that's not great either because my child has to be great. And so it's, you know what I mean? It's just an endless exhausting path of destruction. It's very sad. I mean, it's very sad because it kind of just, like, as I said, scorches the earth of everything around. It's an endless vacuum.
You talked about lack of empathy.
Yeah.
What does that actually look like?
Well, a lack of empathy, you'll notice in your friendship group, empathy is all about feeling your position and feeling what it is like to be you. And, and having an understanding of other people and the plight that they have and the suffering that people might experience and all the rest of it, you know what I mean? That you can feel about Gaza, but you're not a Palestinian because you have empathy for people and you have empathy for destruction and what people are suffering with. A lack of empathy is that you can only see life through this lens and you don't see anything else that is anyway not you. And so you don't feel for other people. There's about 0.2% of the population is sociopathic, right? And a very small percentage of those do things and hurt people. But they mightn't have feelings for anybody. Doesn't mean they're going to do something pathological now, but they mightn't have feelings for anybody. And I think a narcissist probably has that marker in them too, is that they have no feelings. And they feelings for other people, and they can't feel another person's position. And so when they're saying terrible things to you, actually, they don't have the capacity to kind of go, I shouldn't have said that to Jennifer.
No. That
was terrible. I wonder how Jennifer's feeling now after I said that to her. And I compared her to her sibling, and said, oh my God, his fireplace was so nice. And that comparative thing that parents can often do. They don't think about, God, that must have been hard for me to say, oh my God, his life is so much better than yours, kind of. And wish.
So they sleep well.
Yeah, they can sleep well. Yeah, well, they don't generally ruminate on the stuff that they've done.
Can we go back to kids for a second? Because when we first started this chat, I thought we were predominantly just going to talk about romantic relationships, but it's so interesting talking about the family dynamic and children and that kind of thing. And if parents have a child and they spot a lack of empathy early on,
exactly,
in the child's life, what do they do?
First of all, I'd say, how we interact with people. Modelling is the greatest tool we have as parents. All the psychologists and all the TikToks in the world, modelling is the greatest thing. And there's no quick answer to any of these things. TikTok will tell us there is a quick answer to all these mental health and complicated human condition. There's not, right? And the greatest indicator of your child becoming a healthy, functioning individual and able to manage and resilience and slings and arrows of life is how you model and how you present yourself in the world. And so how you talk to people in a restaurant, somebody who has no power over you and as lowly paid or whatever it is, and how you interact with them, your kids are watching that.
Yeah.
How you talk to the stranger in the street, your kids are watching that. How you talk to people in need in the street, your kids are watching that. They're watching you all the time interact with people. How you talk to your partner, how you argue with your partner, if you're slamming doors and demeaning them and screaming at them and all the rest of it and cursing at them, your kids are watching that. And so the greatest way that your children become empathetic and kind stewards of the world going forward is how you are as a parent. And there is no greater thing than your children seeing that. I have a charity in the Philippines and I go out there every year, and I brought my 14-year-old daughter last summer, she's 15 now, out with me, and I could just see the idea of stewardship developing in her head. I could see the idea of others and altruism and all of those ideas and how much she has in her life. And I could see it all going around in her very privileged life. I could see it all going around in her head thinking, oh my God, there's more to the world than this, and there's more to the world than me, and and these are really important things, because happiness is based fundamentally in those ideas. Doing for others, that's where happiness is found.
Not for a narcissist.
Not for a narcissist. No, well, a narcissist will never be happy.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the really sad part about being a narcissist, is that they have very high levels of depression.
Really?
Yeah, really high levels of depression. Because how could they be, how can they be happy when they're living like that and their whole life is about them and there's nothing outwards looking. It's all about inwards looking, about how you can satiate me and how you can. And I was watching this interview, it was a brilliant interview, you should watch it, Kathy Bates, the famous actress. It's a brilliant interview. It just sums up the narcissist so perfectly. I was watching on, well, there's a I don't think she knew she had a narcissistic parent, right? And when she won the Oscar, her mother said two things to her. She said, well, you didn't cure cancer, right? Imagine winning an Oscar. And then she said, and you didn't thank me. And in the interviewer,
I saw that.
you see that? And the interviewer says to her, you did thank your mother. I was watching it. I was nearly crying watching it. He's like, you did thank your mother. She said, I didn't know. And he played the clip for her and she broke down. He played the clip of her thanking her mother during the Oscar. And so the Oscar, which would have been an incredible...
Wasn't enough.
Well, here's the thing. What happened? The Oscar became about the mother.
Yeah.
So it was nothing about her daughter celebrating. You know what I mean? It became about her. And it took away from everything. It demeaned it and diminished it for her. And she was sorry in her head that she didn't thank her mother, and she didn't do anything amazing. It wasn't curing cancer. It was just a bloody Oscar. You're going, hang on, you know what I mean? That's what narcissists do. They turn every little bit of goodness into about them and how somehow they can be victimized by it, so that all the attention around here goes into them. Because again, it's about attention.
And there's good and bad in that story. The good is that Kathy Bates went on to become a really successful actress and do what she loved and is amazing. But the sad part about that is the mother still had a hold on her all these years.
All
later.
those years. And you see her breaking down. You actually see her breaking down. I think she's probably 60s, mid-60s in that interview. And she breaks down. She starts crying. That's what happens.
That's right. Yeah.
That's what happens to you. You know what I mean? And so you live this indoctrinated ideology about the parent until you kind of start to crack it.
How does a narcissist feel when you do cut off contact? I mean...
Oh, they'll probably blame you. They'll say things like, all I gave you, all I did for you. You know what I mean? All I did for you, and I gave you my life, and this is how you treat me. That's how narcissists talk. You know, everything I've done has been for you. Look how ungrateful you are now. Look what you're doing to me now. Now when I need you, look where you are now. That's how a narcissistic parent talks to their child.
What advice would you give to anybody listening to this who is in a toxic relationship with a narcissist?
Yeah. Again, life is, I know it's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. Life is short here. You know, we have a brief life. And if the person you're in a relationship with is dominating you and making you feel about 2 foot small here, and is at your confidence all the time, and they're demeaning you, putting you down and saying awful things and feeding into your worst insecurities about yourself, that's not a relationship now. You know, that's something you need to think about, and think about what would it be like to be with a healthy person. Because in my experience, the amount of people who leave relationships will always say to me, whether they get into a relationship again or not, they'll say the peace that came into my life was profound. And we all deserve to live in that bit of peace there. And so maybe it's about having the confidence to figure out, how do you get away? You know, how do you move towards a healthier life, free from somebody constantly putting you down? None of us deserve to live in that dynamic. And have the confidence, I would say, have the confidence and be brave to decide what you want for your life. Because somebody probably took your confidence and they took a bit of dignity from you and all the rest of it. Have the confidence and be a bit brave to disturb your universe here and move towards something that could be a much brighter future. Because you'd be surprised how quickly you look back and go, geez, why didn't I do this earlier?
And it's doable.
And it's doable.
And it can be done. And remember, when you do move on, maybe take a little break. And then when you do find someone that you find your peace with, maybe have conversations, because you'll have to unpack a lot of stuff in that relationship as well, right?
But I would go to do a bit of therapy and figure out, how was it that I got so easily pulled into this thing?
Because there's trauma there, a lot of trauma.
Oh my God, absolutely. And things will be huge triggers for you as you kind of move out of that relationship.
Yeah.
And so I would be trying to figure out, how do I, and it's not about blaming yourself for, you know, belittling yourself, for like whacking at yourself. It's just about saying, I'm a human being, I made a mistake here. What was in my personality there that I kind of let this person in and so deeply into my life, and how do I, for so long, you know, for so protracted in my life, that this person demeaned me and was, you know, abusing me. Figure out what that was about. And so trying to work that out of your personality and see where it came from, have compassion for yourself, and then kind of think, I think I'm a bit more ferocious now after that experience, that I'm never going to let someone like that in again.
100%.
Yeah.
And what if somebody is listening and think, oh, I have some of those traits as a narcissist, what would you say to that person?
Yeah, I would say absolutely, and that's what can happen to us. Generally, it's a genetic kind of thing there, and how we were parented, and if there was addiction in your family and all that kind of stuff. So there's plenty of complicated life experiences that go into making us who we are. So have a bit of compassion about that too. It's not about castigating the narcissist. If that is you, I would say maybe go and do a bit of work And the work I would do when people do come to my clinic and they'd say, I heard you talking about that, I'm wondering about myself, I'd often get their family to come in and hear what was the lived experience without like, battering someone or, what was the lived experience like? How did you experience me? The parents would say, what was I like? And so they're really important moments of like healing because we're all messy, Jennifer. I don't get it right with my kids all the time. I come home tired and angry and all this stuff and all the rest, like everybody else. And we say things that we know we shouldn't probably say because we're tired and all that. And we have to be able to understand that that's just life.
And it's normal. And it's
normal
okay.
and it's okay. And so it's, about having compassion for yourself, trying to figure it out, and then moving away from some of those negative behaviours that you've been doing.
Do you apologise to your kids?
All the time.
So do I.
Yeah, all the time. I said to my daughter, I'm sorry about that. I shouldn't have said that. I'm tired there. And I can see her going, and she always says to me, my 15-year-old, she's great at that. She'd say, don't worry, Dad. I know you were tired. She'll say, don't worry, Dad. But I can see it's improving her confidence. You know what I mean? It's working at her.
And it's modelling good behaviour.
Absolutely, that you apologise. And she said to me recently, she's two things she said to me recently. She said, a girl said something negative to her in school. And I said, what was your first thought? And she said to me, I was wondering why she was feeling so insecure in that moment, right? And I was like, that's what you want to think. I've been doing that for years with her. What people say, what it means, all that stuff. And then she said something else to me, about an argument she had. And I just said to the person, if you want to be in a relationship with me, this is kind of like you have to get used to that. And I was like, good on you. Have the teeth to be able to say no to something.
Yeah.
And that's a really important
and
thing.
giving them the power, not taking their power away by trying to fix everything.
No. I don't fix anything for her. Honestly. I don't know. She says to me, I'm going, like we went to the Ed Sheeran concert. She said to me a couple of years ago, I said, you should put a jacket on. It's going to be freezing in Croke Park. She's like, no, Dad, fashion's more important. I said, well, we'll see.
Was she freezing?
I was like, good old learning there for
Exactly. Well, listen, it's been really, really insightful. Thank you so much for giving me your time. I appreciate it. And please, if you are in need of help, do seek. There is a lot of professional help out there. Is there any good resources out there that people can go to?
God, for narcissism, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
But if people are feeling trapped or feeling that,
well, there's women's, as you say, Women's Aid are brilliant. They're very good to give you some advice.
Absolutely.
There's loads of kind of centres out there that you can ring and try to figure out what is my relationship like. Am I in an abuse? I think a lot of people, and generally, if you're asking that question, you probably are. It's like if you're wondering if your partner's having an affair. Often the answer might be yes if you're wondering about it, you know what I mean? And so, am I in an abusive relationship if you're asking that question? I'd ring someone like Women's Aid. You can send me an email or, you know what I mean? I will respond to them. And so, there's a lot of support out there for you.
Thanks for listening.